I didn't raise my voice when the HOA president slammed her binder on the table and demanded that I unlock the community-esque private bridge immediately. I just slid the folded deed across to their attorney. He opened it, skimmed the county stamp, and the color drained from his face. The bridge they had been threatening to fine me over for nearly a year didn't belong to the HOA at all. It belonged to me. I let the silence hang. No yelling, no grand speech. Just the quiet sound of paper on wood, and the realization spreading across their boardroom that their entire strategy, the fines, the threats, the letters, had been built on nothing. For months, they'd acted like they owned the only road in and out of the valley. But the truth was simple. The gate they padlocked wasn't theirs to touch, and the bridge beyond it had my name on the title. The funny part is, I never wanted a fight. When I first moved to the valley, I wasn't looking for drama or legal battles. I had just retired from 2 decades of teaching high school history, and I wanted a slower life. The valley offered exactly that. A stretch of pine-covered hills, a creek that wound its way down to a modest stone bridge, and an old house that needed some love. The property came with quirks: no cell service in parts of the land, occasional flooding in spring, but it had a calm that suburban neighborhoods never could. The bridge was what sold me, honestly. Built in the 1940s by the county as part of a logging road, it had been decommissioned decades ago when the valley stopped producing timber. My grandfather used to drive trucks over it when he was young, and when the land shifted through auctions and sales, the bridge ended up bundled into the parcel I bought. To me, it wasn't some strategic asset. It was just a quiet place where I could sit in the evenings, watching the water and letting the stress of years of grading papers finally wash away. Life was peaceful. Those first months, I'd wake up early, make coffee on the porch, and walk the land. Sometimes deer would cross near the creek, and I'd just stand still, listening. I fixed up the cabin room by room, slowly painting, replacing fixtures, hauling scrap. My nearest neighbors were polite enough, waving when they passed by. I wasn't looking to join committees or poke my nose into anyone's business. I figured we'd coexist just fine. That illusion cracked with a piece of paper taped to my gate. At first I thought it was some delivery notice, maybe a flyer for landscaping. Instead, it was a formal violation notice from the Homeowners Association. According to them, the gate I'd put at the bridge obstructed community access and needed to be removed within 14 days. Failure to comply, the letter threatened, would result in fines of $100 per day. I reread it 3 times, half convinced it had to be a mistake. The gate had been there when I bought the property, an old, squeaky metal thing, and I'd simply repaired it. More importantly, the land and the bridge weren't listed anywhere in their jurisdiction. My property line didn't fall under HOA covenants. I'd checked before buying, specifically to avoid that nonsense. Still, I figured it was an easy misunderstanding. I called the number listed, explained politely that the bridge was on my deed, and that the HOA didn't extend past my fence line. The woman on the other end barely listened. She just repeated that the board had voted, and I needed to comply. That was my first real glimpse of what I was up against. The letters escalated quickly. Another notice arrived, this time accusing me of blocking emergency egress routes. They claimed the bridge was community infrastructure and that by locking the gate, I was endangering residents. That one stung more, not because it was true, but because it felt like an accusation of selfishness, as if I was hoarding something vital from my neighbors. I tried diplomacy. I drafted a careful letter with copies of my deed, highlighted sections showing the bridge included in my parcel. I mailed it certified, emailed the scanned copy, and even offered to meet in person. The response, a curt email dismissing my interpretation of ownership and warning that fines would continue to accrue until I restored access. That was the turning point. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with their letters spread out beside a pile of county records I'd requested. My first instinct had been frustration. Who were these people to bully me? But then a colder, steadier part of me took over. If they wanted to play legal games, fine. I'd play better. I spent weeks pulling every document I could find. The original county survey from 1946, stamped in blue ink. The quitclaim deed from the timber company transferring the bridge into private hands. The highway department's decommission order from 1978. complete with the signatures of 3 commissioners. Piece by piece, I built a file that traced the bridge's ownership straight into my hands, legally airtight. Meanwhile, I documented everything, every notice taped to my gate, every fine they claimed I owed, every voicemail. Neighbors who once waved stopped making eye contact, clearly afraid of crossing the board. My daughter stopped visiting on weekends because she hated the tension. Nights grew long, spent with law books and maps spread across the dining table. I wasn't angry anymore. I was preparing. When the HOA finally tried to escalate to the county, they made a fatal mistake. They filed a complaint insisting I was obstructing a public right-of-way. The county clerk forwarded me the paperwork, and I could practically hear her smirking through the phone when I asked for the supporting documents. "They don't seem to have any," she said. Of course they didn't, because it wasn't theirs to claim. By the time the board summoned me to their meeting, I was ready. I walked in with a plain folder. Nothing dramatic. They started with their usual posturing. Threats about legal action, about liens, about community I let them talk themselves in circles. And then, when their lawyer leaned forward and asked if I had any counter-evidence, I opened the folder and slid the deed across. The silence that followed was better than any speech I could have given. The attorney flipped pages, scanning signatures, stamps, county seals. His expression said it all before he even spoke. "This, ISNT, within your jurisdiction." The president sputtered, "They mandato que no," what this meant for access. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew the game was over. After that meeting, the fallout came fast. The HOA quietly stopped sending me fines. A few months later, I heard the president had resigned, citing personal stress. Neighbors started waving again, some even apologizing under their breath when we crossed paths. The gate stayed locked, but now it was respected, not contested. The valley is quiet again. I spend evenings on the bridge, just listening to the creek, the way I wanted all along. Sometimes I think about how much energy they wasted trying to control what was never theirs. All it took to undo them was patience, paperwork, and the truth written on an old deed. Now, when I drive past the board members' houses, they either wave stiffly or pretend not to see me. I don't care which. Either way, it's silent, and that silence is worth more than anything they tried to take.